Back again, YouTube, and welcome back to the coding workshop. And after that mammoth task that we had last night, I'm up again this morning, fresh and ready, and we're going to be cracking on again. But before we get back into where we left off, I sort of like was trying to wonder why, when I hover over a method that inherit that dot block, I wasn't getting the information that I was expecting. Now you can see that I'm getting something, and that's because what I did, I actually went into the extensions and I downloaded some extensions that seems to have done what I wanted, done what I've wanted it to do. And once I've done that, I've noticed that some of my class sort of like lit up like a Christmas tree. Like for instance, my crud class, and it's showing me a whole host of errors that I've got, which are simple errors that we can adjust. You can see this block, all these red line indicate an error. So we're just going to go back over. We're going to just go and correct these issues. And what it's saying is that for this particular one, I've implemented the interface, but I've not actually agreed to all the contract. I've not signed the contract properly by not implementing one method that we've got, which is a raw query. So we've not implemented that, which is fixable. That's not a problem. But let's sort of like go ahead and address all these errors so we can crack on. I'm going to use, let me say magma. Well, the first one I'm going to address actually is this data mapper, and all we need to do is bring that in because there's no reference to it. There's no namespace reference to it, so that's why it's crying, because it doesn't know what this object is. So I'm going to bring it in. And you can see that I'm now getting that drop down, which we wasn't getting before, and that's part of the extension pack that I've put in. So I've got this I think it's called namespace resolver, and it's now giving us all the namespace that we've created in a drop down list, so I can easily choose from the appropriate one. So we're looking for data mapper, and it's in that class, and I'm going to bring in data mapper. And you can hit save. You can see that one is now clear. Use magma. Find the query builder right there. Bring our query builder in, and what other errors have we got? We got these throwables, and again we just need to reference that up top. It's going to be throwable. You see that all just went? Well, all the throwables just went. So what else have we got? There's this data mapper. Why are we getting an error on here? This data mapper build query parameters. Data mapper. Let's just implement this into this method. Public function raw query. And if we look at the interface, we're going to see what we got. We've got two arguments which we're going to bring in. And you've also noticed that I've off screen, I've just added some metadata just to not bore you guys with this. I haven't changed anything. I've just added some metadata to my interface, so we know exactly what they're doing. And once we're over in our actual class, you can see that we get that metadata up here and get all the parameters of this method, which is what we want. Now let's try and figure out what this error is. So expect two arguments, one found, which is true because this method does take two arguments. And where are you? Again, a bunch of errors that we've got in this class. Just going to go around and address these. So 2 arguments, I'm going to make them optional. I think that should fix that error, which it has. So back to our data mapper. Let's just bring these in, use throwable, and need our database connection magma. I don't seem to have that yet. It's going to be database connection, and we want the interface. That fixed that. And dbh. Oh yeah, so an error right there as well. That should be dbh. And data mapper exception. So we've not got that in as well. So use magma liquid exception data mapper exception. I'm just going to drag this to the top. This is just preference. Right. What else have we got? Got PDO. Again, need to reference that. So use PDO. We've got 2 more errors that we need to fix. And execute and num rows. And what we're saying, what's the error with this? Num rows is not compatible with the method in our interface. So let's have a look at our interface. Num rows. What have we not? So we've not set the return type, which is meant to be int, and this meant to be void. What don't you like now? Again, I did actually off camera again, or off screen, added some more metadata to this class. Again, I've not changed anything. I've just added some description for my method, and I've put these on one line. But I seem to be getting an error still on this one. Try and figure out what it is. So it doesn't want a void. Actually, let's take that off and let's adjust that in our interface. Let's get rid of that. It doesn't want a return type on that. So that error is gone. Right, let's move on to a different class and see what we get in. So crud interface, let's close that down. Let's close this down for now. And query builder, have we got any errors yet? We've got some errors. So we've got values. What's this? Unset values, undefined variable. Looking to do something right. Values which should we're setting that, are we sort of like initializing that variable to an empty string, and that normally take care of errors like that. Search query string, again this error is because we're not really returning anything yet, but for now, to get rid of the error, we're going to return an empty string to clear that up. And what we're saying right here, we've not implement raw query. So at the bottom, let's come down and put that method in. Raw query, you can see that I got a misspelling as well, so I'll correct that. Raw query, and again return an empty string for now to clear that error up. Again, misspelling, and if we misspelled it right here, that means it's going to be misspelled in the interface class as well, which is right here. So now that error is gone. Our page is looking error free at this moment. Let's see what else we've got. Factory is fine. We've got some errors in our environment configuration class, and that is credentials. Oh yeah, so that's that we're using on the for each loop. It should be just credential singular. Get rid of that. And int array, it's got 2 underscore, needs to be 1. Get rid of that. Again, plugin like this help us to see some of these errors that we've got, so we can sort of like just trash them out. Just saw something a while ago that just lit up, and again we just need to bring these in. Use magma, liquid. Just database. No, that's not in that directory, that's in a different directory. So the database connection, and we want that interface. And the second one is going to be magma, and that is in that directory, and need exception, and need that. And again, I'm going to put the longer text at the top. Again, just personal preference. And we've got database connection string, which is showing an error. And what have we got here? Expect type, found string, data mapper. Data mapper class, and see what we're expecting. We're expecting a database connection interface, which is an object, but we've got a string. And what we need actually is database connection object, and not the string. Yep, let's fix that. Again, we would have seen these errors when we fire up our application, but again, with these small extensions, we can just correct them from the get-go, or correct them now. So that all looks very good at the minute. And let's go back into our router interface, and we got a void on our dispatch. Right. It's not compatible. Why is it not compatible? Route string route array params, and it's not compatible because we have not initialized the variable or the argument. So that should have taken care of that, which it has. And we've not created any exceptions. So let's do that. Oh, we've got one actually. Let's just get that out. PHP declare. We've got now strict types, which is now showing up in that drop down. Namespace when magma, and we're in our router directory. Router exception actually. Say class router exception, which is going to extend base exception or the PHP exception at this moment. Again, as I said, and something just happened that I just clocked. See that when we add this, it add that line automatically. We didn't do that. It just added it automatically. So that's cool. It's good stuff. And just need to pull that in. So I'm gonna say use magma router exception, router exception. Again, I'm going to pull that up top. Then I'm going to copy that and replace it with these. And again, there are going to be some other ones that I think is going to be more appropriate. If I actually bring up PHP SPLs and have a look at the different type of exceptions that we can use, we've got quite a few. This one, bad method call exception, is perhaps a better one to use in this example right here. So we're sort of like checking that the method is callable. If it's not, then we're going to throw an exception. And I think I want to use the bad method. What is it called? It's called bad method call exception. So let's just go ahead and implement that. It's cool. We call it router bad method. Going again, bad method call exception. Bad method call exception .php. And again, let's get the data from here, copy that out, paste it, bad method call exception. There you go, and it's added it. I'll delete that one. Then we're simply going to say router bad method call exception. Router bad method call. Right, let's pull that in. Router exception, router bad. Oh, we haven't done something. Let me just finish this. Bad method call exception. I don't think we renamed the file properly, so let's get that back up. Yeah, it needs to be router bad method call exception, which extends PHP bad method call exception, which I think is more appropriate on that is callable check right here. So again, I'm going to leave that as it is for now until I have a look through that SPLs again and see what more appropriate exception we could throw. So that's all the error that we've got trashed out in our router class for now. It's interface, we're still getting a void, dispatch route and create controller objects and execute the default method. Why are we getting a void on? Oh yeah, the semicolon. Duh. Right. So that should have fixed all that. So what I'm going to do now, actually, I'm going to push this to Git. So Git status. You can see we made a bunch of changes in a lot of different files, or fixed some errors in a lot of different files. I'm going to say git add. So git commit bug fixing in various files. So git push origin master. And likewise, we're going to check our git and see what we've got. And liquid ORM. And you can see the changes that we've made, they've been applied. So yep, that's cool. Right, so let's pick up where we left off finally. And we were in our EntityManager class and we were doing our cruds. And where were we? The last one that we wrote was the search method, and we started the, well, we've just put this in, so we need to implement this raw query method. So we're going to do a simple picked up where we left off. And again, like the method above, we're going to wrap this in a try catch block. And we're going to do a throwable I'm just going to throw it. Say args equal, I'm going to define our associative array for our raw queries. I'm going to say table this get schema and set the type to raw, and going to say, let's quickly have a look at this again and see what the properties that we've defined. How are we going to store? So we're going to store our query within this key. So we're going to say raw, and that's going to take in that raw query that we've got, right? And any conditions that we want to, any where clause within that custom query, we can also send it through the conditions to be bind. Conditions. And do you know that I've got this question sign before this data type, and what I'm saying right here is this could be either null or an array. It could be nullable or it could be an array. So that's what this question sign denotes. Let's crack on. So query equal this query builder. Let's say build query, and now we're getting help with our code completion, which is what we didn't have that last night. So now we've got that through these extensions that we've added. So build query, pass that argument in, and we're going to call the raw query method. I'm going to say this data mapper persist that query and any argument. So it's going to be this data mapper build query parameters, and we're going to pass those conditions in, and that's going to be that. I'm going to say if this data mapper numerals is, we're going to, and this is the bit that I'm actually thinking about, because if it's a custom query, we can potentially return anything. We could return just a single object, or a result, or results, or which is an array of results, or just a single column. So for the time being, I'm going to revisit this and look at implementing an additional chain that we can actually fetch, an additional chain that we can use to either get whatever result that we're trying to get from this custom query. So I'm going to leave it like that for now, because this needs revisiting. I'm going to revisit this. So we've got some description. If we hover over, we can, again, we don't even need this inherit dot because it still pops up right here, which is good. But I'm going to add it anyways. Inherit. What has it just done? It just did something. I don't want you to do that. Alright, so it seems that when we add these comment blocks, it also add these parameters. Undocumented function. It's not undocumented. So let's put inherit doc. And it should bring up those documentation. So I'm going to leave it at that. We're going to do the same down here. Let it bring those parameters in. Then we'll just add this inherit doc. And again, this might not be everyone's cup of tea. You might not like to self-document for whatever reason. That's just your opinion. Mine is I want to self-document because that's just how I want to do it. And I'm not telling you guys, oh, you should do it. If you don't feel you need to do it, don't. But for me personally, I like self-document because I can come back and I can look and see what it's doing without spending minutes trying to figure out what it's doing. And that's a bit harsh as well because we're writing our code in a way that it's readable. So in theory, we should sort of like come look at it and see what it's doing. But I like to self-document my code. That's just what I've been doing. How I've learned to code. That's how I'm going to continue doing it. Just say, paste that in. And I quite like the fact that the extension that we've downloaded has helped us to do stuff like this, because then I can just do the same thing in all my other classes and just, you know, keep it consistent. Paste. And our constructor, let's say main constructor, right? Let's close this terminal for now. And we've got some good information right here. And I think we're going to park it for our crud component or crud class. We'll be revisiting this later on when we come to adding more stuff in, but for the time being, this is sufficient enough because you can see we've got our full crud functions here, which going to do what we need it to do. And we've even added the extra cruds with the S at the end for our search. So let's close this out. So for this class and this entity class, and let's recap quickly. So our liquid ORM, which is our data access layer, this gives our application or gives our application access to the database so we can retrieve and store information accordingly. So my liquid or my interpretation of an ORM is I built mines using different component layers. So I've got a data mapper which maps or which wraps around PDO method that provides us with a layer to access that database. It's got a factory pattern which creates an object of that data mapper class, and that pulls in the required or inject the required object that it needs, and the required object is this database connection, right? And the next bit is our query builder, and this basically helps us to keep these queries or these simple queries in a class which we can reference without rewriting queries within our crud class. We're keeping these central, so if we need to make changes, again, we make the changes in the one place, and that will affect all the other queries in a good way, hopefully. And our EntityManager is like our layer that interacts directly with those database. Yeah, so it's got the crud class within it that does all the crud operation. Now, this is my interpretation of an ORM. It might be different elsewhere, I'm sure it is, but this is what I'm going with. This is what I've created, and I'm going to go with this particular option. But that's not the end of the ORM, because there's one more layer that I want to implement, and that is called the repository layer or the repository pattern.